Welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast, where we elevate marketing leaders inside and out. I'm your host, Veronica Rami, master marketer, executive leader, and mentor to ambitious marketing leaders wanting to advance their careers. Each episode is filled with genuine, unscripted conversations with some of the world's top marketing experts, accomplished leaders, and industry trailblazers representing brands, both large and small. Our goal with this podcast and everything we do is to help you master your role, nurture your team, prioritize your well-being, and evolve into an industry-leading Rainmaker. This is the Rainmaker Podcast. Welcome back to the Rainmaker Podcast. I don't even know how to intro this next guest, if I'm being super honest. She is just fan-freaking-tastic. Yes, she's a national bestseller for her book, Tough Titties. Yes, she is one of the most badass, unapologetic copywriters with a resume to back it up. She's worked with Bravo, Fandango, NBC, HBO, Nick at Night, Nickelodeon. She's worked with celebrities, Joan Rivers, Kevin Hart, Kathy Griffin, Vanessa Williams. I mean, she is a goat. Like, I don't know how else to put it. She's kind of a living legend, at least certainly in the creative marketing space for me. Laura Belgray is on today's podcast because I wanted to ask her all questions in regards to being a shrimper. Like, literally, you see a shrimp, you think of Laura. What does shrimp have anything to do with copywriting, which is her discipline, her expertise? We get into it. We get into the brand identity, morphing into identity of the community and what it means to be a shrimper and the levels of shrimpers. Like, it was such a great conversation. And she even said it right at the end of the podcast. She's like, I actually learned a lot about marketing on this podcast that I didn't think about before, which is like the compliment of compliments. So I'm so excited for you to listen to this podcast episode. It's one of my favorites for sure. And I think you're actually going to get a lot out of it. So maybe take a pen and a paper to this next episode. So without further ado, please welcome my friend, Laura Belgray. Laura, welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Veronica.
Okay, I'm really excited to have you on the show for many reasons. One, because I already told you without any type of like holding back, I'm like fangirling. I want to put you in my book. I'm very excited. Can I tell you how I first learned about you?
Please.
Okay. So I don't know if you know a woman. She was a marketing speaker in the circuit with me. I mean, pre-pandemic, like years ago. Her name was Rachel K. Albers.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't say we're friends, but certainly like I knew of her, especially from that circuit that we were both a part of. We were kind of the nerdy marketing speakers at different conferences. And I remember following her and seeing her literally dress up as a shrimp, like a full head to toe shrimp costume to pay homage to you. And I was like, who the hell is this? Like, who's Laura Belgray? What the fuck is this shrimp thing? I was so confused. Now, if you know Rachel, she'll go all out. And so she dressed up as Marie Forleo, as Marie Forleo's book cover to Marie Forleo's book, the party or whatever. So like, she's an all out type of human. But that was the first time I learned about you before our mutual friend Linda reconnected us. But like, I remember someone dressing themselves in a shrimp costume to love on you. And I'm like, I don't get it. She's a copywriter. I don't understand how shrimp has anything to do with copywriting. So can we take it back to the beginning? How does shrimp have anything to do with your expertise, please?
Oh, gosh, it really doesn't. So everyone always asks, why talking shrimp? How did you come up with that name? And I always say, I wish it were a sexier story. It really started with our tax accountant who said we had gotten like reamed in taxes after we got married and thought it was supposed to be better as a couple. And he's like, I don't know what made you think that, but basically if you want a better tax situation, you should incorporate. And the two of you are both, independent contractors anyway. So let's make it a corporation. So Stephen, my husband, has always been in the restaurant business, and I'm in the writing business. And we just thought, like, what might have something to do with both of us or nothing. And we also just had a bunch of random names that we liked. He said, find something that has an available URL. And we're like,
practical.
Stephen loves talking animals. He's now constantly watching reels of like, dogs saying things. And talking animals wasn't available. I actually considered the name. There was a gift store in our neighborhood, like a junky gift store called Funny
Mm-hmm.
Cry Happy Gift Shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought Funny Cry Happy Media, but that was actually taken.
Oh, dang it.
And yeah, we had a whole bunch of names and then just settled on Talking Shrimp. And believe it or not, that had not been scooped up. So it was available on GoDaddy. And it just over time, we realized, oh, it's the perfect name, especially for my company, because
Mm-hmm.
what stands out more than a talking shrimp? And what I do is all about standing out
Mm-hmm.
and being noticed. So
Yeah, I love you are very unapologetic in your own positioning because on your homepage, you're like, get the only emails anyone likes anymore. I'm like, oh shit. I love
oh, yes,
it.
I did.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, so this was a very practical solution that your tax accountant made you and your husband come up with a company name that would
yes.
overlap his love for food and your
Yes.
love for conversation and the art of communication in the form of writing. And here we are with Talking Shrimp. Okay, that's cool. That's a really cool, fun story of a genesis. However, it's taken on a life of itself where you have people outside of you and your husband dressing in full shrimp costumes. So, like,
yes.
how do we go from LLC name
Mm-hmm.
to you're on your homepage with a shirt that says I'm a shrimper, people can join the shrimp club. Like, I don't know if you can even like take me down that like memory lane of how we go from LLC name to like identity
Yes.
of your community name.
Yes, S corp. Not that it matters.
Okay.
I just, once I named it and started building a website,
Hmm.
I really wanted shrimp. Like I wanted the idea of a talking shrimp to be kind of literal,
Hmm.
like at least in its representation on my site. And I had someone design a website graphic, like a homepage graphic that had shrimp, like a clusters of little cartoon shrimp with cartoon speech bubbles, and I like had to have all these bells and whistles. Like I want those to populate with rotating quotes. And one said hola, and then it would turn
That's
into
bilingual.
yeah, it was bilingual. Gambas, gambas que hablan. And then there would be one that said, copy that turns heads, and one that said, made you look. And so I just started having these cartoon shrimp all over my site, and I had a lot of fun with it. And had stickers made and had a business card made, and it just became the brand identity. And there, at the time, there wasn't even a picture of me on the site to be found.
Hmm.
I was
Hmm.
like, I didn't want to look the same as everyone's site. And
Sure.
everyone had like a picture of themselves and a blog. At the time, everyone's website was a blog on the homepage. And I just wanted it to be different. And it was just fun to have a theme that I could play with.
Sure.
And so as I built my brand, it just became known for the shrimp. It just caught on, and I had tote bags made too, and people would and the name gets attention. People have no idea what it is. Some of them think it's a seafood company,
Totally.
but I go to the bank and someone will say "Talking Shrimp." That's a funny name. What's that about? And just anywhere I go, what is Talking Shrimp? And that's it. It really had nothing to do with copywriting, but then it became synonymous with copywriting because
Hmm.
I always intended that. And I also had learned from my work in TV, because I wrote TV promos for
Hmm.
years,
Hmm.
the idea of putting ownership into a promotion. So when we read a spot out loud in the writers' meeting, someone would say, can you put, like if it started with presenting, the Jeffersons, someone would say, you got to say, put more ownership in the top and say, Nick at Night presents the Jeffersons, or
Hmm.
Nickelodeon brings you
Hmm.
Snick Snack. So I knew to put, Talking Shrimps 60-minute makeovers copywriting mini course, or when I named something or offered something, Talking Shrimp services, I'd always repeat the name and make it a thing.
Okay, so this is, I mean, now you're like you said, this is your brand identity. The identity of the
Yeah.
shrimp is synonymous with you. The services that are being rendered, the freebies, the gifts, I mean, like all things are under that talking shrimp umbrella.
Yeah.
But like, let's talk about being a shrimper, like
Uh-huh.
the person, this personification of brand values beyond your S Corp. Like, how do we get into where other people, you're not the only shrimper anymore. Like you were the OG
Right.
shrimper, but now we
Mm-hmm.
have lots of shrimpers. Where did that happen? That jump?
Yeah, I think as I started to build a community
Mm-hmm.
among my subscribers, like as I built my email
Right.
list,
Yeah.
and I say community, but I didn't really have any way to connect them for them to know each other a little bit on social media. They would say like, "Oh, I love your emails," etc., but they didn't identify as
Mm-hmm.
shrimpers. I hadn't called them that yet, and I'm not sure what year it was, but at some point I realized like I wanted to call them something. I just wanted to, instead of like you, my subscriber, I just, I think at first I was saying shrimpsters. And then I didn't like that. And I just changed
Like
it to
Napster.
shrimpers.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Napster. And shrimper was just easier. And it stuck. People liked it. They
That's
would
okay.
say,
There it
I'm a
is.
shrimper. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
longtime shrimper. People would reply to my emails, shrimper here, I'm an OG shrimper.
Mm-hmm.
And they would kind of wear that mantle with pride. And it was mostly, in the beginning, just to identify themselves to me, not necessarily to each other. But then, probably when I started to like speak on stages at events before I introduced my program, Shrimp Club, like I would have, say, a meetup, a shrimper meetup. And so that was a way for people to identify in person, like, oh, we've got, I'm a shrimper. Is this where the shrimpers are meeting? And then eventually I created Shrimp Club, which is my mastermind slash live mentoring party.
Right.
And it was just for 20 people, but they were the true shrimpers. And I've always identified them like to my list as Shrimp Club member or Shrimp Club superstar, so and so, because I wanted my list, my subscribers, to also
Yeah.
feel like they were shrimpers, and you didn't have to be part of this 20-person group,
Mm-hmm.
which is that came with a pretty high price ticket to
Yeah.
be a shrimper. But those are sort of the ultimate shrimpers, and have a community now, like a really solid community. It's like 120 people strong or more.
This is interesting. Well, this is fascinating to me. So, like, as you know, I'm writing this identity marketing book. And so I've gone down this, crazy rabbit hole as one does in researching things. And like, what I'm realizing is that identities are formed two directions, directionally. One, either the brand issues the identity to the people and it's
Mm-hmm.
adopted, or in the absence of the brand doing it, the people themselves self-label. It's like human conditioning. We must appoint ourselves a name,
Yes.
not just by birth from our parents or our adopted parents, but literally like it is a condition in which we want to self-identify to another person as in commonality, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, for example, Swifties, that wasn't her, that was the people. Or Harley
Right.
Hogs, Hogs was the people, it wasn't Harley.
Yeah.
And there's lots and lots of different examples. And then I have examples on the other side where, Nicole, the intern from the Best Marketing Strategy Ever that went to 500,000 followers in less than 6 months, she called them Smash Army because they liked her wearing an army hat, smashing a can of her company's products. And it
Oh.
took, right? And so that's why I perked up when you were like, yeah, like the company is talking shrimp. I called myself such. And then you tried out a couple of different identity outfits. You didn't like Shrimpster, Napster,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
anybody who remembers them. But then you used Shrimper and it took. I think that's the key, whether it's issued by the brand or it's self-labeled, it clearly needs to go through an adoption process where the people say, yes, I accept being this label and it meaning something to them.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever taken it even further? And I don't know if it's in the walls of your paid program in the Shrimp Club, but like what the values or the DNA ingredients of what it means to be a shrimper?
No, I've never defined it. I mean, when someone subscribes, like my
Mm-hmm.
welcome email, And often in my broadcast emails, I will say, my shrimpers, that's you because you subscribed. Or I think the call to action on my website, like at the top, inviting people to join the list, it says like I send the only emails anyone likes and opens anymore, as you said, and then it says become a shrimper and drink them up. So I let it be known from that point, that entry point.
Yeah.
By subscribing, you become a shrimper.
Yeah, no, this is where it's interesting to me because what I've also learned in this process, not that it's like a caste system from India, but kind of like even amongst identities is layers and levels of identities, right? So like, Russell Brunson, the funnel hackers, but it's not just like the ordinary funnel hackers. Like there's layers and levels of funnel hackers, right? Like you can go up. I had Olivia Lemon. She's like one of the biggest fans of Taylor Swift. Her account, Swifties for Eternities, like over 500,000 followers. It's bananas. Wow. She's been following Taylor since she was 13. She's 24 now. Like this is a lifelong thing for her.
Yeah.
And I was asking her on the podcast, I was like, how do you define the difference between a fan versus a Swiftie? And she had a full-blown definition. It is not the same thing. I was like, oh, interesting. So like even amongst an identity is subset identities that are, like you said, like OG shrimpers,
yeah,
true shrimpers,
yes.
like all in shrimpers, like even within the
gold
identity.
Star shrimpers,
gold
who
star
bought
shrimpers.
Everything. Those are gold star shrimpers.
Gold star. I love that. I have a friend who sells language boxes. So you basically buy this box and you learn a foreign language, you and your family, the same day that you buy the box. It's a company called Talkbox.mom. It's fantastic. It's all about like just conversational fluency versus, grammar.
Yeah.
And the people, because there's 9 boxes per language. The people, like the family's like, well, I'm a 9-box family. I was like, oh, versus like a 1-box family. Oh, right. So just fascinating the psychological impacts of this idea around identity, self-concept, how we want to belong, even if it means belonging to a capitalistic brand. It's fascinating to me, right? And you did it, from what I can tell in the relaying of your story, it's like you did it intuitively. You wanted to give them a name. You wanted to make them feel, you recognize that you had a way to communicate with them, but they didn't have a way to communicate with each other. Like, talk to me about your intuition, how that, because you also are like one of the most badass copywriters that I know. So like, does that come from training or is that really just your intuition?
I think it was really my intuition.
Yeah.
And just wanting something to call them as a group. Like I refer to them often. Like it feels bland to say another subscriber said to me the other day, but saying like I write my emails to one person, they will be to you, Veronica, and I'll say one of your fellow shrimpers replied to my email the other day and said this. So I like to always remind them that they are a community. But it was a tool for me just to be able to communicate and call them something other than subscribers or readers. That felt boring, and this felt more specific and proprietary.
You are anything but basic. That's for sure. I have a question for you, and I don't know what stories will kind of float to the top of your mind. I had a woman on the podcast. Her name is Sarah. She owns a company called Red Ants Pants, where they sew red ants into these workwear for women specifically. Because 10 years ago, no company was making workwear for women. That wasn't a thing. They had to buy men's clothing, right?
Yes, flattering.
So she solved that problem, and she sewed these little red ants. Because in a red ant colony, it's the red female ants that do all the work.
Smart.
Super cute, right? And I was asking her like different, she calls them the ant hill. They have Antidote, the blog. It's so cute. It's this whole subset of the tour of pants, all these fun things. And I was asking her different stories from her community. And the one story that she said right at the end of the podcast, without even thinking about it, was she had one of her women who was obviously a customer, but more than that, part of the ant hill. She was going into pretty significant surgery and wore her pants in the surgery because it made her psychologically safe. It made her feel psychologically safe going into her surgery. I was like, oh my gosh. And I think a lot of us, like, we want to, sometimes you'll see people like brand themselves with a Nike swoosh or an Apple logo. Like you're like, oh, I've made it, if people are like tattooing themselves. Besides Rachel dressing up as a shrimp, what are some other cool shrimper stories? Like, what are some cool stories from your shrimper community that like them living, breathing, walking, talking in that identity of shrimper?
That's funny. I don't know if anything matches up to that. I think that real, and no one has tattooed themselves
Not yet.
or like joined the aquatic life. But but people send me shrimp gifts all the time.
Yeah.
Shrimp earrings, shrimp socks, shrimp this, shrimp that, and here's the thing that I found that's interesting is that everyone thinks of me when they see anything shrimp themed. Like they will tag me or send it to me. They see like ModCloth kept that clothing company had some shrimp fabric that they kept seeing, and people kept sending it to me. And what I took from that is, you know, when people are trying to define themselves online, especially define their brand, define their personality, like what is my, I don't know, what is my personality? What am I all about? I say, like, think of the things that people think of when they think of you, like associate with you, but what makes people think of you when they see that thing? So, you know, not just like, oh, Veronica loves dogs. I'm making that up. Or like chihuahuas.
Not
but
so
if they
much.
saw a chihuahua, they would think of Veronica. Yeah, me not so much either. Totally making that up.
But I get it.
Yeah, and it's not just shrimp for me. Like I am very vocal about the things that I love, the things I'm obsessed with, etc., the things I hate. And for a while I was writing about, like I wrote a piece on Medium about rage watching Emily in Paris. It was in 2020, about how it was 2020's greatest hate watch. And so since then, every time Netflix comes out with a new season, people will think of me and say, hey, did you start watching Emily in Paris yet? Are you hating this season yet? So shrimp really, you know, the idea of shrimp, that really created something where, I mean, shrimp are pretty ubiquitous. And for some reason, they've been on trend in terms of like memes and gift stickers and all that in stories. And so people see them a lot and it makes them think of me, which is handy.
You know, that's really validating. Identity is something that it's weird. I know I'm writing a book called Identity Marketing, but I didn't even realize I was necessarily doing it, to be honest, even in my own work. Like, because I have the Rainmaker residency program where I take marketers and I transform them to rainmakers. And like, I'm an OG rainmaker. I make it rain as a marketer, right? And I do it certainly in my leadership programs where I'm like, you're not just a CEO, you're a visionary. What does that actually mean to be the spokesperson for a mission and a vision, right? So like a lot, again, intuitively, I was doing it for so many years and didn't really put it together. But I'm certainly known for like this rust color red. And so I'll get DMs and people will be like, I'm shopping and I see a shirt in your color. Can I send it to you? And people will literally send me clothing in this kind of rust color red, because I've kind of like claimed it as my own, I guess, in connection with the rainmaker concept.
Yeah.
I'm not mad about it because it's my favorite color. So like, it really works. If you want to shop for me, please do.
Right.
Please do. But you're 100% correct to say that, like, in addition to you, what else can we, almost like in a tangibility sense, in a personification sense, like we can associate you with other things that are of the world that remind them of you. Like, how smart is that in association, just from a really subconscious level too?
Yeah.
It's funny because when you wrote your book, and the title is Tough Titties, if anybody has picked it up, please do. And so now I'm like, when I think of titties, no, I'm just kidding. No, but I'm just like, with the book, it wasn't a shrimp book. Like, you didn't write, like, it wasn't a complete transfer of one brand to another. Was that even a conversation though? Like, did you ever feel any type of loyalty to the shrimp brand as you were writing this book that was more about your story? I'm just curious. I mean, as a aspiring book author, I'm curious if that came up internally for you.
Yeah. So I was dead set against writing a marketing book or a copywriting book. I wanted to write a book of my stories that had nothing to do with marketing, or although there is a chapter on like how I built my business,
Sure.
but that's more of a life story. And so in that sense, no. But my shrimpers know me for my stories as much as they do for copywriting, marketing skills. That is that is the foundation of my copywriting. The foundation of my marketing is personal stories and a bit of TMI, right? So so the book really is loyal to the brand, and it is for them in that way, in that sense. And then the cover is very much on brand.
Yeah.
It's very aligned with my brand, right down to that there's Cooper font in there, and the retro look of it. And that was really initiated by my publisher and the book designer. Like, they wanted it to match my brand, which was great for me.
It's really good to. That's actually. Again, as you're just relaying smart things, I'm like, integrating, processing in my brain in real time. I'm like, oh, it's really smart. It's true. Like, that also expands your brand beyond the shrimp as well. But there's some continuity, and it's not a complete departure from what we recognize visually around you. I think that's, again, just really, really smart. Can I ask you on a personal note, why were you so dead set on not writing the obvious book, which is your zone of, just what you do, your profession? Like, why was it so meaningful that it had to be more personal?
This is the kind of book I always wanted to write. It's the kind of book I like to read. Mostly I like to read fiction, but I also like narrative nonfiction, meaning memoir / personal essay.
Totally.
And I loved David Sedaris from like the first book I read. I was like, that was a revelation to me. Oh, you can write like this without having a complete story theme. Like, you don't have to have a beginning, middle, and end for the whole book. It can be separate vignettes that are true to your life. And I was like, that's what I want to write. That is how I knew that I could write that way.
That's so cool.
And I mean, I'm not saying I can be David Sedaris. Only David Sedaris is David Sedaris. But that I could write funny personal essays that form an arc that make up sort of a memoir. And if I was going to write a book, that I wanted to write the book that I've always wanted to write. And I wanted to write the book that I would like to read. I have trouble reading any prescriptive nonfiction, how to, anything like that. I cannot get through it. It's just like, I know a lot of people, most people in our industry gravitate towards that. They want to learn from a book rather than be entertained. I want to be entertained.
Sure.
And I'm just unable to read through it. And I mean, my God, I've tried to read or listen to Atomic Habits maybe 40 times and never gotten past, the half of chapter 1. So I didn't want to write a kind of book that I wouldn't actually read.
Fair.
And it's also such a huge endeavor to write a book. And so, so like, why am I going to write the kind of book that wasn't my dream to write? And also, I teach that kind of stuff all the time. You can get a lot of it for free in my emails, and you can get it in my courses. And I would rather charge $500 for it than charge $28. It's actually harder to sell a $28 book than it is to sell a $500 course, believe it or not.
Sure. Well, I'm kind of in awe of you because, and maybe this is just how it's coming across, but like, you've amassed a decent amount of success and notoriety just being authentically yourself.
Thank you.
And also not taking yourself that damn serious, which is, I think, what a lot of us, especially I think female entrepreneurs, like we analysis paralysis, we fixate on like how to present ourselves to the world. We want to do it in a perfect way. We want the packaging and the positioning. We want all the things. Yes. Because it helps alleviate what we think. Well, we think it will help alleviate the imposter syndrome that I think a lot of us feel, that not enoughness. Yeah. And so the impression that I've got by lovingly internet stalking you and now having this conversation with you is that you just don't subscribe to that bullshit of any kind. Or am I wrong? Do you have these moments where you're like, I struggle too?
No, you're absolutely right about that. That because I am very clear that that perfection does not create connection. And I gravitate to people who are their totally their imperfect selves,
I love that.
who show their messiness, who
Yeah.
make it look like you can do this without being perfect. You can do this without being totally polished. Make it easy, underthink it. And it's a relief to me to see that from someone else, and it motivates me to do more because it's like, you know what, this doesn't have to be perfect. And it's so permission giving when I see it in somebody else, or hear someone like an author I love on a podcast just saying, like, she's brilliant, funniest writer ever. Her name's Sam Irby. And I heard her, I think it was on Glennon Doyle's podcast, saying, yeah, I'm not up on current events. I can't read the news. I can't pay attention to it. Sorry. And I was like, thank you. That makes me, it's just so life giving, permission giving. It helps us forgive ourselves for the things we think other people judge. And so I think being yourself is such a gift to other people because then it gives them permission to be themselves and they pass that on to someone else. And then it's like that old Fabergé commercial, and so on and so on and so on.
Okay, by the way, I wrote this in, like, what a great line. Underthink it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, just do it. The opposite. Nope.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
underthink it.
Underthink it.
I love that. What a great, like, marketing campaign or a little word truffle. I call them word truffles.
Yeah,
Like,
right. And by the way, I'm an overthinker. I do get caught up in like, this has to be perfect. I'm working on a presentation right now that I like just have to record. I have to sit down and record it, but I'm like, it's 2 minutes too long,
Yeah.
and this part is not quite right. And what if they already know this? And
Yeah.
I need that constant reminder of just
Yeah.
underthink it.
Underthink
Just
it. No, I think it's
it does
good.
not
I
have to
think
be perfect.
as a type A, oldest daughter, all the stuff I wrote, well, yeah, I get it. Okay, so here's final question, because you're just like a well of genius for somebody
Thank
that,
you.
because I think it's very normal in the absence of trust in self or faith in the unknown to just do your own damn thing with horse blinders on. We don't do that, right? We look left, we look right, we look to see different models around us to see how one should do the thing.
Yeah.
If people go to your website and they see I am a shrimper, talking shrimp club, and like, I love Laura's brand, I love the invitation to be, I love all of these things, I want to kind of emulate it. Is there any final do's and do nots that you would tell somebody who is trying to maybe copy or be inspired by what you've built? I mean, let's just be nice, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, is there anything that you would say, careful?
Yeah. I mean, it blows my mind how few people, no, I shouldn't say how few people, but how many people are lacking an originality chip. Like,
Agreed.
how are people so unconcerned with originality that they are willing to just copy someone wholesale? It's mind blowing to me. So I would say if you are tempted to copy, don't. Know that even if those things aren't important to you, they are important to me, and they're important to somebody else. So I know that imitation is like the greatest form of flattery, but it is insulting to me when somebody copies my stuff, copies the branding, the color scheme, the color palette and the font and the language. That's too much. Borrow one element that you
Sure.
like,
Yep.
but let it inspire you. Don't
Yep.
copy it. Like, don't call your people shrimpers. I don't think you're going to, but don't do
been
that.
taken.
And yeah, and like I have a button on my nav bar that says the magic emails, to sign up for my emails. And I've seen other people put theirs as magic emails. I'm like, no, that's
Come on.
copying.
Yeah.
So I would say, first of all, if you're going to steal, it's way better to steal from outside your industry. I know it's tempting to look at like,
fair.
I mean, and really, because then it won't be stealing, it's adapting. It's,
Yeah.
you know, turning it into something else, like steal from outside.
In legal world, I think it's called, I was talking to my attorney about this, multiple discovery or parallel discovery, where like two independent people without any influence on one to the other just happen to come up, like two Thomas Edisons, they just happen to both come up with the same, innovation, and
Right.
just happen to do that. That does actually happen in a legal suit.
Uh-huh.
So I think that's actually kind of wise advice. Like if you are wanting to borrow creativity from other sources, may we please advise you to look outside of the space of your immediate competition.
Yeah.
It actually would better serve you than just to continue to look at the people who are doing what seemingly you want to do. And I think that's actually phenomenal advice. I love, that's probably one of my favorite things. That's why, like, I love looking at the NFL. I love looking at artists. I love looking at like just movies. I'm very inspired, even though I'm not in the entertainment space necessarily. I'm wildly inspired by other brands and what they're doing in an innovation kind of way that we could learn in the online space or for the personal brand division or whatever. So I think it's really, really good advice.
Yeah. I mean, my friend and mentor, Marie Forleo.
Yeah.
And she's my partner in the Copy Cure.
Mm-hmm.
Like long ago, like 12 years ago, when she was getting ready to relaunch B School, her main like signature course, she created a site called liveyourdream.com, I think. And it was entirely inspired by a J. Crew campaign. So she didn't look at anyone else's stuff in the space. She was inspired by that. So she wasn't ripping anyone off.
Sure.
There was no one of her colleagues who were going to say, hey, that was mine.
Yeah. I don't know Marie personally. I helped connect her with Roger Lev. Anyways, it was like back when I worked for Pete Vargas for a hot second. They were both speaking on the same day, so I got to connect them. But without knowing her, I feel bad for her in the sense that, like, how many people have gone to their web designer and said, I want a website like Marie Forleo's website. Or like, she's probably one of the most ripped off humans.
Absolutely. And she knows it.
Yeah.
And she has an originality chip. And it's really offensive to her the way it is to me. I mean, she notices people taking from her brand.
Totally.
And, she then changes things up because
she has to.
You have to, but then people, of course, rip her off again. And I think most people, again, just don't know that that's not cool.
Well, and I think there's some people that even preach to do it. So it's confused. It's for more immature entrepreneurs. I can see how it could be gift wrapped as good advice, but really it's actually not flattering, right? So okay, so we do this thing on the podcast because I've just asked you all these unscripted questions and you've just been like such a champ, such a shrimper. We let our guests kind of ask me the final question of the podcast, and you get to ask me whatever the hell you want to ask me, because it's only fair that maybe I sweat a little. I don't know.
Okay. What is the biggest revelation, discovery, like mind-blowing aha that has happened for you in researching for your book and having these conversations?
Ooh, the biggest mind-blowing, oh my gosh moment. Okay, so let me see if I can put together some of these thoughts in an eloquent way. Like, speaking of James Clear, that's so funny, Atomic Habits. If you make it to chapter 2, in chapter 2, he makes the argument that the best habits are formed from identity based, not outcome based. So meaning, like, I don't go to the gym to work out because I'm trying to get fit. I identify as a fit person because I am fit. I therefore will work out and eat right.
Right. I am a person who does this.
Yes, it's identity-based habits. And so, like, I read that book and I'm like, yeah, that makes total sense. Probably the biggest thing that was revealed to me, or where I started thinking about marketing. I'm like, man, marketing, we've been doing everything backwards. Like, how have I not figured this out in 17 years as identifying as a marketer? Like, majority of my discipline, the craft, the education that I've received and my certifications and whatever is like to really gift wrap the outcomes, the benefits, extend the benefit, urgency, scarcity, like all of those tactics that we deploy to get people to buy. And I'm like, wait a minute. Are we doing this backwards? It's not supposed to be an outcome-based marketing approach. It should really be an identity-based marketing approach. So then I discovered this man. His name is Americus Reed. He's the professor of marketing at the Wharton School of Business. So I want to give credit where credit is due. But he explored this at a really psychological level and published this colossal book that is dense. You would not make it.
No.
It is so dense. And I went through it, and it was just this kind of epiphany that, like, shit, what if everything that I've been doing for the last 17 years in my marketing discipline has been in reverse of the actual order that should be? And that led me to explore all these different brands, big and small, that have been leveraging identity first marketing, not outcome based first marketing. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, Harley Davidson was formed in 1903. People are buried in Harley Davidson caskets that are personally commissioned by their families. This goes beyond a tattoo, Laura. And
yeah, it sure does.
And the oldest confirmed discovery of an identity affirming burial is 120,000 years ago. How the hell did a 100-year capitalistic brand like Harley Davidson have the same leverage as world religions and the proof of 120,000 years of a discovery? So like and then the book was kind of born from that whole process. And here I am.
Wow, that's a great answer.
I have never given an answer, and I'm glad it's on camera. Yay! Good job, me.
Good job indeed.
That's really funny. Yeah. Well, thank you so freaking much for coming on the show, for being, I mean, you're just so like charming. Like, I just want to be in your presence. You're charming. You're Miss United States. Your beauty and your grace. You're Miss United States. But you're fantastic. And I wouldn't have expected anything else just because of all of our mutual friends who also love on you hardcore. So just thank you for your time. Thank you for your stories. Thank you for coming on today's podcast.
Thank you for having me. And I have to say, this is a totally different interview than any I've done. And I feel like I learned a lot about myself and how I'm perceived, but also just about marketing and branding. I hadn't really thought about it that way. So this was fascinating and very enjoyable. So thank you.
I'm honored. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on today's Rainmaker podcast. Marketers help other marketers. So if there's a marketer in your life who could really use a new perspective in a way that helps them advance their career, please pass this episode forward, share, leave us a review. Everything helps as we embark on helping as many marketers elevate themselves inside and out. You can always visit veronicarami.com for today's show notes, additional links to some free resources and tools for you to help you advance your career. You can always connect with us on social media at @VRami if you want more behind the scenes or a way for us to connect personally. Until next time, my friends, make it rain.